night sweats, stomach cramp, bowel changes, chronic fatigue. These were all the symptoms of my colon cancer. Hi, I'm Johnny Mondi and this is Diary of a Cancer Survivor, and in this video I wanted to talk about how I actually found out that I had colon cancer. Now I'm not going to go too much into my symptoms, but if you are interested in that, I have already created a video which I will put a link to somewhere up here or over there, we'll see. So it started off in 2022 and worth mentioning around, I can never remember the month, but I know that it was our now departed Queen Elizabeth's Jubilee, which I believe was April. So around that time I finally got, something in my eye. I got struck down with COVID after avoiding it for 2 years and being quite strict on all the rules. I got it, and I got it pretty bad. So the reason why I'm saying this is because for the next several months, all the symptoms that I was started to display, I kind of put them down to, oh, well, it could be long COVID. I was also deeply, deeply unhappy in my 9 to 5, my day job. So I kind of basically dismissed what was actually going on. And all the time now, with the power of hindsight, I look back and I'm like, yeah, my body was screaming out. It started with just like, John, you need to pay attention to this. And then it was, you need to listen. And I didn't. I really, really didn't. Towards the end, just before, a couple of weeks before I actually had my colon cancer diagnosis, I don't know if it was unrelated, but I was waking up more to go to the toilet for a pee, on and off. And that's really worth mentioning. A lot of my symptoms it wasn't every day. I'd kind of get them maybe for a couple of days, and a week or two would go by and I wouldn't. I think we always believe that if there's something wrong with us, it'll be every single day, or we'll be feeling like absolute shit. And I wasn't. I really didn't feel myself. My mood had completely changed. I was a kind of shadow of my former self. And I put that down to a lot of things, not just the cancer, but yeah, it wasn't anything drastically wrong with me. It was just little niggly things. So night sweats, waking up to pee. I'd get IBS type symptoms, so every now and again stomach cramps. It just felt like my immune system was shot. And the tipping point was I found a rash on my back, which turned out to be shingles, which is often a sign that the body is run down, you're stressed. And also I had a really bad chest infection, so I was off work for about a week with that. And then eventually, I think I'd had 3 trips to the GP for kind of these symptoms individually over about 3 months. But eventually, and just by pure chance, I guess, I was in the GP about, I think it was because I was waking up to pee, so I thought, uh-oh, that could be something. Incidentally, I don't think it was related, or that I'm aware of, to the colon cancer, so who knows. But while I was there, the advanced practitioner said, oh, you're over 40, every year you should be having your bloods done, just as it's a service we offer. Great. I thought, okay, let's do it. She said, you haven't had them done for a couple of years. So I had my bloods done. A few days later, I get a phone call. Mr. Mondi, we want you to come back in for more bloods. Okay, and this is kind of where the pieces of the jigsaw started to fit together, that something was wrong. Okay, great. I said, do you mind telling me what? Can you tell me why over the phone? And the woman on the phone just said, oh, nothing to worry about. It just, your bloods have come back and it shows that you're slightly anemic, so we want to do some further tests. Great. I thought, that explains why I'm so tired, probably explains why I'm run down. I'm anemic. Great. Problem with iron and hemoglobin and all the rest of it. So I went in, had more bloods. A few days later, get another phone call. Can you come in just to go through the results, your blood test results? Yeah, of course. So sat down with a very, in hindsight, this doctor kind of, there's a few people along the way that I could thank for the fact that I'm still alive today. And she's definitely one of them. And she went through the bloods. And I found it quite interesting because I didn't even know what I was being tested for. I still assumed that it was just for anemia. But they tested me for a lot of things: diabetes, cholesterol and calcium levels and all that stuff. And it was bizarre because she started at the bottom of the report and it was all green, which I was like, great. But in my head, I'm like, why are you starting? It's like the good news before the bad news. So anyway, we went through it. Diabetes green, cholesterol green, all good. We get to the hemoglobin levels, iron deficiency. Okay, that's basically dropped off. So 2 years ago, which we only had a blood test from 2 years ago to compare it to, but it had dropped on its arse, technical term. Now, we obviously at that time didn't know if it had slowly been decreasing over 2 years or over the last few months it had just dropped because we only had the previous results. Fine, I thought, okay, I'm anemic. Let's, get some iron in me. Then she said, and I'd never heard of this, my ferritin levels were also low. Now, I think during pregnancy this can happen because of the baby taking a lot of the nutrients. And ferritin levels are a marker that something else isn't quite right in the bowel. Now, I was sat there and still kind of confident that it wasn't anything too serious. And I said, could it be cancer? And she looked at me and just said, it could be one of 100 things. She said, but I'm being led. She said, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't explore what was going on. And again, I thank her from the bottom of my heart for that, because off the back of that, she then told me to have a FIT test, which is a fecal immunochemical test, which is basically a poo sample. So I had to go home, do my business, scoop it up into a little container and send it off. Again, only a few days later, I get a phone call. Mr. Imondi, we need you to come to the hospital. Okay, why? Do you mind me asking? We found some blood in your stool. And at that point, I knew something wasn't right. Obviously, there's blood in my poo. But then I started thinking, shit, this could be potentially very serious. And I think it's worth mentioning that I hadn't seen any blood in my poo, so it's not, although it's one of those things that an indicator of bowel cancer, and I've done a video on this, is blood in the toilet, in your stool, in your poo. If you can see it with the naked eye, there's clearly a problem, but I didn't have any of that. It just depends on many factors. So they wanted me to come in for a colonoscopy. Now, if you don't know what a colonoscopy is, or you're going to have a colonoscopy, I've uploaded a video which I'll put up here where I go through exactly what my experience was like. So I had the colonoscopy, and it was at that point where literally just after I'd had the colonoscopy, the specialist came out and told me and said, sat me down with my partner. And I remember it so clearly still. It doesn't haunt me, but it sticks with me. And it was the wake-up call that I needed in hindsight. But those words, he sat me down, he said, Mr. Imondi, we were unable to complete the procedure, the colonoscopy. We couldn't get the camera past a growth in your colon. It was a tumour. It's cancer. And yeah, those two words, I kind of, in that moment, it felt like infinity. There was the part of me that wanted to keep it together. I'm with a couple of people I don't know. Stiff upper lip. But I'm okay with that, and I gave in and just broke down and cried. And after that, he said, look, and the problem was because there was one tumour they couldn't get the camera past in the colonoscopy. And it was quite, I always do this, just get a picture of a colon. But just past the rectum, the start of my colon, the tumour was up there, so there was the rest of the colon unexplored. So we didn't know if there were any more tumours, if the cancer had metastasised, how bad it was. But he said if it's just that tumour, it's operable. It's quite straightforward surgery to get it out. Now, I didn't realise how big it was. It was a pretty big tumour. So a few days later, I was booked in, and again, bless the NHS, this all happened in a few weeks. From finding out, I think I found out on the 6th of December that I had the colonoscopy was the 6th of December. And then on the 22nd of December, I was in for surgery to have it removed. So it was, this was a short time of, I didn't really have time to process it. I don't know if I still have, but here I am. So I had a CT scan on the Saturday after my colonoscopy. I didn't get the results, but a few days later I was called in back to the hospital with Mr. Flindle. Now, he was the head surgeon who was going to operate on me. And he said, first of all, and my other half missed this. We left the appointment, and she was like, "But what about the CT scan?" He said it was clear. It's fine. Now, effectively, what that means is that the cancer hadn't spread. So I had one tumour, big tumour, in my colon, and they wanted to obviously cut that out. Standard practice for bowel surgery is to just chop it out, and if they can, do a resection, so stitch the colon back together. And he gave me a couple of choices. So he said, because you're young, effectively, they'd had a discussion. I could have had my entire colon removed, which meant that because I'm young, I'm at more risk of getting colon cancer again, although that's for another video. And also because I'm young, I can take that kind of surgery. If I was in my 70s or 80s, they wouldn't offer it me. So they were kind of looking at preventative. And the other option was just to cut out the section and a bit more where the tumour was, take any lymph nodes if they were infected, and job done. Which I felt woefully underqualified to make that decision. I was kind of sat there, I found out that I had cancer several days before, and now I was given the option of, do we remove your entire large colon, or do you just want that? Like it was a haircut. Now, I know nothing about haircuts, but kind of, should we just take a bit off the sides, or should we take the lot? Yeah. But ultimately I decided to just it made no sense to remove, if the rest of my colon was healthy, I'll make the massive lifestyle changes that I have made to ensure I never get cancer again, or do everything I can to very much limit the possibility of it coming back. So I said, no, just take the bit. And he said, that's absolutely fine. I'm willing to do that. Both legitimate surgeries. But then he said, caveat to that, until I get in, there were a few, he basically said, depending on the state of my colon, if there are any issues, he was just warning me that he would take the lot. Now, if you have a full, so my surgery was called a left hemicolectomy. So they ended up being able to just cut out the tumour and stitch my colon back together. What would have happened if I would have opted for the entire removal of my colon, which I forget the surgical, the actual term for that. They would have reattached my small intestine, because on your body, your small intestine attaches on your right-hand side. That is my right. Your small intestine connects to the colon there, and then the rest of your colon comes on there. What they would have done is remove all of that colon and reattach the small intestine to the other side. So effectively, when you eat food and everything else goes through the small intestine, then straight out of your rectum. Side effects of that are when you need to go for poo, you really need to go for poo. And I have a friend who was in that situation. He said, as soon as I go somewhere public, first thing I do, where are the toilets? And also a colostomy bag, stoma. I didn't know if I'd have to have that, depending on if they could reattach my colon. There were so many unknowns. So we'd agreed on the left hemicolectomy, just take out, if you can, the tumour and reattach it. So when's this happening? Me expecting weeks, months, and he said, we can't wait. It's you're going in next Thursday. So this, I think, was the Wednesday. So I had 7 or 8 days before I went into surgery. So I went into surgery on the 22nd, had the operation, the general anaesthetic, so I was out for it. Then spent 6 days in hospital, up and down. I think I only had 2 bowls of soup. I just couldn't eat for the first couple of days. I'd never had any surgery in my life, so it was a real eye opener. But the surgery was a success. They cut the tumour out, and I went home after spending Christmas in hospital 6 days later, I believe. I think it was the 28th of December. And yeah, that was kind of, in short, my colon cancer journey. So I ended up stage 3 because it hadn't spread, and I've recently had some MRI results because this CAT scan isn't very good. So rewind. Colon cancer, the next organ it tends to spread to is the liver. Now, I had a CT scan, CAT scan, to see if it spread, but a CAT scan isn't very good at penetrating the liver. An MRI scan is, which I had a few weeks ago at the time of recording this video. The results have come back. It definitely hasn't spread. They offered me, following on from my surgery, they strongly advised I have 6 months of chemo. I've declined that to opt for going down the more natural route. There were a lot of things I weren't doing before my diagnosis. I was very sedentary. I had a terrible diet, lacking in any nutrition, so I've done a lot of research into that, and that's the route that I've chosen. But they will give me regular colonoscopies to just make sure that everything's okay. I think it's 1 or 2 a year. I'm still waiting to find out. So yeah, that was in short, hopefully not too long, my experience and how I found out about colon cancer and a little bit after. But I think it's worthwhile saying that I feel fitter and healthier and better now than I have done in a long time, because cancer really did show me that I needed to make some pretty hefty changes in my life, which I'll share more of on this channel. And if this video has been useful, please just boop the like button below, because it really helps me and it helps other people to find these videos, which is the whole point. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe. Big love.